Hello everyone, welcome back. We are on part 18 today, and I'm gonna start right now. Not really, because I still have a few things to show you first. But this is like where we are at, or at least where I am at. I have, as you can see here in the outliner, already worked on the first sequences, just so that I can now show you a few tricks with particles. So if you remember, in a previous time we talked about creating sequences with the lighting conditions, so I'm gonna show you what I've done. So here is the animation, okay, and if you really want to have a look at how it looks like, this is what we had, okay, and I've done this for the first sequences, this one as well, okay. And today I'm gonna start with showing you. Oh, that looks quite like that. I didn't really check it, but oh, that's nice. That's nice. Okay, let's not waste too much time. I'm gonna start by talking about cameras, and as you can see, I'm gonna go back to sequence 1. The cameras are also animated, okay, in my shots. Let's move to here, okay, and that's what we also want to have in our project. So I'm just gonna start with this scene here. I might add a plane and maybe duplicate this cube a bit everywhere so that we can have a sense of movement, because if there is no reference we don't see if we move or not. And I'm gonna separate my views so that here we have the camera view and here we have a normal view, okay. So the lighting, you know all about it, or almost all about it. And now for the cameras, what I usually do is something really simple, and you can see the camera movements in the project are not complicated. So what you can do is set up a key, as we've seen before, and what I like to do first when I work is have only location keys. So I'm starting like this with just one location key, moving to, let's say, frame 50 or 30 so that it's not too long, and then I'm moving my camera in the 3D space, okay, and there I'm adding another location key. So far it's not complicated. The movement is a bit fast, okay, so let's have it on frame 60, and I've set up the end frame at 60 so that it just looks like that, okay. You can make this a bit bigger, and that's it. Usually what I do is this. Sometimes you can't go in a straight line, you have to move aside a bit, and another tip that I use is when I have the camera selected and it works with every kind of object, in the object properties tab you got something here, a section called motion path, and then you can set a range as well, numbers of steps, and hit calculate. You can set again the range for the calculations and hit OK. This will display a line along with the object is moving. The dots here represent the frames, so that the further away two dots are, the faster the object is moving. And here you can see these are close to each other, so it's accelerating here at the beginning and then slowing down at the end. And when you have something like that, I can enable auto key here, okay, on my timeline, and then just choose to have the camera move a bit. You can see the line just change a bit to show you what change you are doing, and then it will adapt the line to the new trajectory. If it doesn't update, you can still click back here on update path, okay? But usually it does update. And what you can see here is that the dots, sometimes they could have changed. Like if I were to move this here, for example, and see it hasn't updated the path, so I'm just clicking here on update path, and look how the dots here are further away from each other and here closer. This means this will go fast and then slow at the end of the movement, and this is not recommended when you have a camera movement. You can see it's just a bit strange, it's lack smoothness, okay, because usually the camera movements are like the same speed throughout the whole movement. It's better. So I'm gonna move this key back where it was using Ctrl Z, and here I think we've got something a bit smoother. Not that smooth, not that great, but it's a bit better than what we had just before, okay? It's maybe a bit too fast. And now I'm gonna have a look at my graph editor, okay, to see what kind of keys were added here, because I set up auto key. They added rotation and scale keys. I'm gonna select them all and then right click and choose delete channels, okay, because I only want my location keys. And for the rotation, because sometimes you want rotation, I usually, for this kind of movement at least, only set rotation key at the beginning of my movement, okay, and maybe I can change the rotation of the camera, something like that, okay, and set a rotation key, and only one at the end of my movement, not in the middle, because this is a bit tricky. Okay, and let's move watch here in front of me. Okay, this makes for a much more smoother movement. Okay, you can see it here. Maybe to see it better, I'm gonna add more cubes where the camera is going, and then I'm gonna scale this the axis. Okay, and now you can see the movement looks smooth, okay, in the camera view here. Okay, that's the way I would animate cameras most of the time for smooth movements. And one important thing I'm gonna show you now is that, look at the camera, here there is a black triangle. This means this is the active camera in the scene. So when we switch to camera view, we are seeing through this camera. But let's say I add another camera in my scene. Okay, I have it here. Look, the triangle isn't black. This means this camera is not the active one. Something that you might have seen in the beginning of the video is that I have at the bottom of a timeline some things. They are markers, and here you've got a marker menu. You can go to marker and select add marker. There you will have a marker that has a name like F17, meaning it's on frame 17, but this you can still rename by going to marker and choose rename marker. I'm gonna call it marker tests. Okay, and this you can set at any time you want, and you can select them and move them anywhere on your timeline. Okay, but what's also great here is that if you have an object selected and you should mainly use a camera, you can use marker and select bind camera to marker. This means that when the timeline arrives at this point, it will switch the active camera. Now this camera is not active anymore because there is no marker bind to it, so I can just go back to frame 0 and do that, bind camera to marker. So at the beginning of the animation we can see through the first camera, and once we pass the other marker, see, we can see through the other one. Okay? And this is what I have in my scene. So now back here we can see I have a marker for each of my cameras here. Okay, camera 1, camera 2, camera 3, and I've also set up a marker at the end of each sequence, leaving a gap in between the change, just in case I want to modify my sequence or the pace of it, and it will just take a few more frames. Okay? But now I know that the beginning of my first sequence starts here, so I could set the start point to here using my keyboard control and the home key. Okay? And then if I I set my timeline here, go to marker and choose jump to next marker. Now I am set on this frame here, and I can press on my keyboard Control N, and this will set the end time. Now I have my first sequence, okay, in here. And what I can do, usually this is what I do, you can play the animation and then look at how it looks like, or you can also use in your 3D view here, at the top you get a menu which is called view, and you can select viewport render animation. This will do a render of your animation, but with what we see in the viewport, so it's very, very fast, much faster than doing a real render, of course, because it's not calculating the lights or the materials. If I set this, see how fast it goes. Once you've got that, you can either watch it in another software or go to render here and choose view animation, and it will open another window with this animation here playing. And this way you are sure the playback is real time. You won't have any things slowing down the play of the sequence. And this, if you want, if you hold your left mouse button on it, can drag across the width of the image and it will play from start to finish. Okay, so that then you can have a look at a few frames and just say, oh, here this tone is not correct. Oh, here I can see that there is a problem here or something, you know. Okay, so that was the first part of today's lesson, and now we are gonna jump to the sequence number 6. Okay, let's go to here. The beginning of the sequence is here. I'm gonna set a random ending like that for the moment. And so this is, I'm gonna show you on the storyboard this section here where the leaves are going around the plant. Okay, so I'm gonna make sure the trajectory of my camera goes on the left of it and to the plants, and then looking up at the plants. But of course I will have to set up the particles first so that we are sure we follow them. And to do that, first we need a particle system. Okay, I'm gonna add a plane. So let's switch to wireframe mode to see where my plane is. It's here. Okay, and I'm gonna just scale it so that it will be about the size where I want the first particle to spawn. Okay, this will be where I want some particles to spawn. Plane, I'm gonna call it plane spawner, particle spawner. Okay, now let's add a particle system, and I already have it from few sequences before. I have a collection which is called leaves particles, and this is like the leaves I used for the plants. And also I duplicated them. I had 3 at the beginning, I made them 6 so that we will have more variations. So, and now I need to set frame start and frame end, so it's starting at 2000, and let's set 2300 just to make sure. And the lifetime 500 frames so that we are sure we are having enough particles. Okay, at the moment they are really slow, so let's change their size, and I can then compare their size here to the size on the plants so that they are not too big nor too small. Okay, I think this looks good enough. Okay, now I have my particles over here. What I'm gonna do is set their velocity to 0 meters per second so that they are really stick with the plane here when they spawn, and of course change the field weight gravity to 0. Okay, so what I need is 2 things. If you remember from the storyboard, we have a few leaves on the floor here, and they will go this direction and then turn around the plants. To control their movements once they reach this space, I'll need to add a force field, and the best way to have it already set up is going to the add menu and choose here at the bottom force field, and I'm gonna use a curve guide. This guide, it's around here again, okay, is a curve, and you've got at the moment 2 big giant circles. This is the start and end area where the particles will go. So let's say I'm gonna change its direction, and then for an example set it here, okay, so that this is close to where they are. I'm gonna first add the shortcuts. I'm gonna go to edit mode and change the shape of this curve. And now, if I am to just have maybe, let's have only those 2 at the beginning, the particles are following the curves. The speed of the particles depends on the life of them, so the longer they live, the slower they will go from one end to the other. Okay, if I reduce their lifetime, let's say to 60, see, the ones that are spawning are a bit faster. And you can see that once they arrive at the end, they all die. Okay? And now, in the settings of the curves, what you have here, you've got 3. This is a few frames, after which the particles at the end are free. So they won't die yet, but they are just gonna go wherever they want. Okay, I'm gonna set this back to 0, and fall of power, I think this is how much this affects really the particles. See. Then you've got clumping, and this is great because then at the end you can have like a smaller shape, and this is what we had in our animation. Okay, use max is like the max distance from which the particles are affected. Okay, and now you've got the kink. This allows you to give the particles some shape. I'm gonna choose braid. You know what a braid is. And now if I play the animation, okay, at the moment they're just following straight the curves. If I change the frequency just a bit and the amplitude of it, you can see that now they are kinda going in a circle, the higher the shape parameter, the closer they're gonna stay together. And this is it. Okay, now in the particle system, we can add random rotations to the particles. Okay. And that's it. We will have our particles. What would be great would be, this is called particle system 002, meaning that if I add now a UV sphere and I scale it down like that, okay, I can add it to particle system 002, just like materials. So now I have this. It's the same than this one. I'm gonna hide it. Okay. It is, let's see if I scale this from here like that. Okay. And I make this like this. Okay. Okay. You can see now what it's doing. And this is much better, I think. Okay. It will require a lot of tweaks, of course. The frequency, this is okay. The shape was about following more or less the curve, and the amplitude was something about that. Okay, we can have it like this. Okay, you can see how they do their braid thing. Maybe now that I have this, I can change the amplitude to be a bit smaller. Okay. Now we got something which is interesting. I think the max now doesn't matter anymore, that we have something like that. I will have to figure out how to have something like this going on, of course, because you can't have like the particles spawning like this, of course, unless you don't see them spawning. That would be something you can work on. Okay, and now that we've got this, let's go back to the entire scene and let's modify that. So I need to set this a bit lower, that has the time to do a second turn and then around. Okay, now let's have a look how this goes. And something now that we need to do is to find a way to make it look like it doesn't spawn from here. Okay, so the best way I can think of is that at one point this might maybe stop spawning leaves, and we are gonna add another one here behind the flower, an area that we don't see, where they will spawn other particles. What I'm gonna do is animate the camera first so that we can see what we see and what we don't see. Okay, so now what I have is just a few leaves here, and I'm looking up to catch the rest of them. Now we need to arrange a bit the particles. I'm gonna set up a second one, duplicate it, and maybe this I can move behind the flowers that we don't see it in the camera. See, we can maybe think that all the other particles here are just what was already here before. Okay? I think that's alright. I really think so. What we can do now is, as I showed you earlier, go to View and Save Viewport Render Animation. And now, of course, we can go to Render view animation, it will play it for us like that in a loop, so we can see there are things that aren't great. Okay, let's try it again. Okay, let's say it's alright. Perfect. Okay. Well, that's it for today's lesson. I think we have done what we needed for this sequence. Next time we are gonna, I think, have a look at the smoke and fire for the chimney part when it's lighting up. So hope you find this helpful and that you manage to create this nice particle animation around the plants. Remember to just tweak the parameters little by little, not like I'm doing. And I see you next time. Have a good time, everyone. Bye.